Let's talk about some scary movies. So for today's video, it's going to be a little different. Instead of just reviewing one movie, I felt that because it is the month of October, one of my favorite seasons of the year to watch movies, I thought I would do a video on 15 scary movies to watch during this season. If you haven't seen them before or not, these are just some of my favorites. These aren't the most scariest movies in the world. These are just my picks, and I have some struggles ranking movies. So these aren't in any particular order. They're like roughly in a ranking system, but not anything specific. So if one movie's above another, don't take it to heart. These are just 15 movies that I really like, and if you haven't seen them, I think you should check them out. So at number 15, I chose the movie The Thing from 1982, directed by John Carpenter. Between John Carpenter's movies, Halloween and The Thing, I had to give it to The Thing. Even though Halloween is a great movie, I prefer The Thing. I think that it has some of the best practical effects from its time, and I think it has aged pretty amazingly. I think that it still looks great for a movie nowadays. And I think people who haven't seen it before can still enjoy it and be entertained. Maybe not the most, not the scariest movie, but it has some great intense sequences, it has some great characters, a great concept, and I think it is the perfect movie for those who have fallen in love with the popular game Among Us. It is the perfect movie for that scenario, so if you're in the mood for a movie like that, I highly recommend The Thing. At number 14, I have House of a Thousand Corpses from 2003, directed by Rob Zombie. This is your redneck hillbillies, violent, gory film. Most people would say the best is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I can appreciate for what it is. It is a classic, but for me, I prefer this film. I think it is better. It has better characters, and it's more intense and scarier, more violent, and for those who enjoy those violent movies, I highly recommend this one in particular. And it has Dwight Schrute in it, so how could it go wrong? Highly recommend. Coming in at number 13, I have The Witch from 2013, directed by Robert Eggers, one of my favorite directors of recent times. He's just getting out. He's just starting out with his filmography. The Witch came out and The Lighthouse came out last year, and he's got a new one coming out soon that I'm very excited for because I've loved everything he's brought to the table so far. I just think he brings some really original, unique experiences in the form of movies. And The Witch in particular is for those who love slow burn movies. This movie is definitely slow, and not too much happens, but it starts building and building and building, and then I think it definitely pays off at the end. If this movie does take place in Victorian era, and majority of the movie is in subtitles, but I think it's totally worth it because there is a sequence in this movie that I think was the closest that I've gotten to true fear. I don't want to spoil what that sequence is, but close to the end of the film, there is a moment where I honestly went cold. It just shook me. And I hope that you get that feeling too once you watch it. And I really like this movie. So I think you should check it out. Coming in at number 12 is The Ring from 2002, directed by Gore Verbinski. Hopefully I say that right. This movie is special to me because it is the first horror movie that I watched that really kicked me into gear to get into this genre of movies, and I haven't looked back. This is a very good American adaptation of a horror film from Japan. I think they really nailed it. It's definitely intense, and it's all about a haunted VHS tape. Yeah, most people don't come in contact with VHS tapes anymore, but I think it's still a solid movie, and it's really enjoyable. Coming in at number 11 is the most surprising movie on this list. Sorry to interrupt, but while editing this video, I realized that I never actually said the title of the movie. The movie is Happy Death Day from 2017, directed by Christopher Landon. And yeah, I'll let you get back to the video. I watched this movie a month and a half ago. I just sat down, one of my younger brothers wanted to watch it, and I didn't have too much hype for it. I was expecting a pretty bad movie. Blumhouse Productions really just has some hit or miss movies. You never really know what you're gonna get. And I wasn't sure about it, but I gave it a shot, and I'm so glad I did, because I've literally watched this movie 3 times since I watched it, and it's only been a month and a half. I think this movie is extremely entertaining. I thoroughly enjoyed the characters. I love the concept. It was a good spin on the time loop. I think they actually did a really great job on concealing the twist and who the killer is. I thought they did a really creative job and actually really impressed me. Definitely do not watch the trailer for the second one before watching the first one, because it literally spoils the twist of the first one. So don't watch it if you haven't seen it before. I had it spoiled for me, so I already knew what the twist was, and it honestly still had me guessing because I wasn't 100% sure the way that they structured this film. So I know I wouldn't have believed myself if I was watching this 2 months ago, but definitely go check that one out just for an entertainment purposes for this month, because it's definitely not the most scary movie, but it was really entertaining. Coming in at number 10 is the Blair Witch Project from 1999, directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez. This is for those found footage horror film fans out there. There's probably not that many of you listening. This type of genre for the horror genre has been beaten to death and has been done horribly since this movie came out. But this really was the movie that started that craze. And I understand if you don't like shaky cam, then this really isn't for you. But I really enjoy this movie. I will probably never go camping after watching this. And it's extremely impressive on what they did with this film, marketing the film as if it was real. And like, they did a really good job. And I honestly wish I could have experienced that and this movie had come out in recent times, so I could have experienced that the way it was meant to. And it having that small of a budget, like, there's not really too much that happens in this movie, but it still is very intense and scary. Yes, the F word is used a lot, so just be prepared for that, and a lot of shaky cam, but I think it is a really enjoyable horror film for this time. Coming in at number 9 is The Strangers from 2008, directed by Brian Bertino, with one of the greatest taglines for a horror film since Alien, "No one can hear you scream in space." This movie has the tagline, "Because you were home." This movie is extremely realistic, and it's based off of a true story, and it's just horrifying because this actually could happen, and that is why this, in my opinion, is the scariest movie I have watched. Just because of this is what scares me. Everybody has their own taste in horror films. Everybody is scared by something different. This is what scares me, home invasions. And this movie in particular has one sequence that had me sick to my stomach. It wasn't violent. It was very subtle. And putting myself in the shoes of the protagonist had me just terrified. And that is why this movie had to be on this list. Coming in at number 8 is A Nightmare Before Christmas from 1993, directed by Henry Selick. I honestly didn't realize that Tim Burton didn't direct this movie until I looked that up for this video. So yeah. This movie is a classic, and just the opening of this movie is better than most movies out there. It is perfect for the whole family to enjoy. It's stop motion, and I absolutely love stop motion movies. They're my leading inspiration to love movies and love movie making as a whole. So I love this movie, and I couldn't do this list without it. Coming in at number 7 is another home invasion film from 2016 titled Hush. That is exclusively on Netflix. That was directed by Mike Flanagan, one of my favorite directors of recent years. I have been following and watching his movies as they've come out, and I absolutely love his films, and this was the first one that got me into his films, and it's still my favorite. It takes that home invasion subgenre and then kind of puts its own twist on it, because now we are following a character who is living on her own, who is deaf, and he really plays that perfectly and as creative as he could. He played it to its full potential in this film. I love this movie. Home invasion movies scare me to my core, so this was another perfect one for me, and it's Mike Flanagan, so you gotta show the love. 100%, go check it out. Coming in at number 6 is The Cabin in the Woods from 2011, directed by Drew Goddard and written by Joss Whedon. This is pretty much like the Avengers Endgame of all slasher movies. It pays respect. It's almost like a spoof. It's just extremely entertaining. It does a perfect balance between entertaining and laughing and humor, and then scary, intense sequences. And it pays homage to all of those horror movies you love. Definitely watch this one after watching all the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all of those movies. Then go check this one out so you can get the full experience. I love it. It's just so entertaining and rewatchable. I love pretty much everything about this movie. Coming in at number 5 is The Conjuring from 2013, directed by James Wan, one of my favorite directors of all time. I've loved every movie he's done, and this movie, I think, is the perfect haunted house film. So if you're looking for some paranormal, supernatural scares, this is the perfect movie, because he is a master at building intense sequences and jump scares that are actually meaningful and properly set up. And there's some really good sequences in here that still scare me after rewatching it. I think this is a great rewatch and definitely a scary movie. Coming in at number 4 is It Follows from 2014, directed by David Robert Mitchell. I love this movie. Okay, so it's definitely not the scariest movie that you'll watch, but I am just blown away on this concept. I'm just surprised that it took so long for this idea to come out. The idea of when you have sex with somebody, and almost everybody does, and after the act you actually find out that the person you had sex with had this sexually transmitted disease, to simplify it, where you are followed by this creature. They just walk, and they always follow you wherever you go. And that is terrifying. Even though this is fiction, it could happen. Kind of. I mean, you can't really say it doesn't exist, but it probably doesn't. It's a great way of trying to bring fear to people who have unprotected sex and having sex with a lot of partners. It's like taking the idea of getting HIV and making it a monster that follows you and kills you. And I think that is just amazing. I love this movie. I love everything. Very creative on the story and how it built up. The soundtrack for this movie I love and actually listen to while I'm writing. And he did a really good job on making the film feel timeless, where certain things happen in this movie, like they watch movies that are in black and white and use futuristic technology. There isn't a time frame when this takes place. It is timeless. And I 100% recommend it. Coming in at number 3 is A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. Directed by Wes Craven himself. This is my favorite slasher movie that exists out there. The idea and story of Freddy Krueger is absolutely haunting and just perfection, just absolutely genius on his end. The idea, because everybody goes to sleep. Everybody dreams. And this movie is like, oh hey, I'm going to make you fear going to sleep. Absolutely genius. And Freddy Krueger is amazing. Robert Englund is fantastic in the role. And I don't think any of the other slasher movies even come close to the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Coming in at number 2 is It from 2017, directed by Andy Muschietti. I have no idea how to say his last name. This is my favorite Stephen King adaptation. I'm actually in the process of reading the book because of how much I love this story, I love these characters, and I love this movie. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I just love how great the storytelling was on bouncing between a coming-of-age film and a horror movie and going back and forth between intense sequences and humor. And I love everything about this movie. It has great characters that you can fall in love with and root for, and it has a terrifying idea that a creature lives out there that can become your darkest fears, and just, it feeds off of fear. That is genius. That is genius for a monster to have. And this movie is just, I love it. Coming in at number 1 is Saul from 2004, directed by James Wan. I love this movie. This is my number 3, my third favorite movie of all times. I love this franchise, even though the sequels don't come close to how great this first one is. I love the story. I love Jigsaw and the whole story of him. And I love this movie. I always thought this was just going to be extreme violence, and that was about it. But this really had a great story. It's a great crime film. It's a great horror film. It satisfies those who like gory films, but it's not too much for the average viewer. I love this movie. Yeah, there's really not much more to say about that. I love how this movie really has inspired me to become a filmmaker because of James Wan and Lee Winnell made a short film about this, and they pitched it, and it got picked up. Somebody fell in love with it. They gave him the funds to make the movie. He made the movie, and now he's this well-known movie maker. And that's the dream. That is the dream. And I loved it. I loved it. So yeah, that is 15 scary movies to watch during this Halloween season. You won't agree with everything on this list. I understand that. I hope that you guys go check out these movies because I love them, and maybe you will too. Let me know down below your favorite scary movie to watch during this season, and follow me on the app Letterboxd. I love this app. I use it all the time to log movies that I watch. I make lists on ranking films, and I write reviews for films because I'm trying to watch as many movies as I can, and I can't do a review for every single one of them. So this is a nice way of simply just writing down my thoughts and rating on a 5-star scale. And I just love this app. Definitely go check it out. It's really easy to use. and it's just awesome, awesome way to look up movies. I'm actually in the process of watching the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street films, so you can watch my progress through that franchise and my ratings of the films on the app. So, yeah, this was my Halloween special for my movies. I wanted to do it earlier in this month so you could still watch some of these movies before the end of October. But anyways, happy spooky season, and go check them out.